All right, so this is how I turned a breakup into making my first $1 million business. Hope you enjoy. This whole journey started for me probably about 5 years ago. The whole journey started 5 years ago because I was in a place where I was in my mid-20s. At the time, I had a bunch of odd jobs. I went to high school and I went to college, hated college, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I just saw that the traditional 9 to 5 wasn't gonna get me the life or the cars or any of the stuff I wanted, even just basic stuff. Forget about big dreams, right? Like, I just knew that wasn't the path, but I didn't know the vehicle. I met a guy one time at a Tony Robbins seminar. He basically had people write down their current income and then their dream income. My current income at the time was like 30K a year or like 2,500 a month. Okay, my goal was 100 grand. How was I gonna do that, right? I realized there was a big gap. Then I look to my left and I see a guy who's in his 20s. His current income is like 400,000 and his dream income was $1 million. And I was just like, damn, this guy's like starting income is 4 times higher than my dream income. And so long story short, I asked him like, hey bro, I hope you don't mind. Like, I happen to see your like income and like your income goals while all of us were doing this exercise. What do you do? And it turned out he worked for a solar company doing solar sales, like door-to-door solar sales, 100% commission. Long story short, I give him a call, I get into door-to-door sales, and then for that year, I end up getting into sales and become the top salesperson knocking doors. I sucked at sales at first. I was terrible. It was 100% commission. We're knocking on doors in the hot heat. Sometimes it's like 80, 90, 100 degree weather. It was brutal. It was super brutal, but it taught me little by little. It was the first time in my life I could see a tangible ROI for effort in short time cycles. So my beliefs got shattered. And so little by little, it showed me that. Fast forward, I get recruited to work at Tesla in clean energy. I become the #1 sales rep there and I'm starting to get a little bit of momentum. And as I'm growing in these things, I find myself, quote unquote, like starting to be successful, right? On my way to like that multiple six-figure level selling, but then just feeling empty inside. It's like initially when you're in survival mode, all you want to do is be able to like pay rent, have food, and then maybe a little bit of cushion for entertainment, right? And so that is the compelling goal, right? Once you have that, then it's like, okay, I want to live somewhere better. I want to drive something better. I want to have even more cushion for entertainment, right? And then later it's like, okay, I want to have that at a bigger level. But I learned I'm the type of person who's driven by doing something meaningful. And for me, money being the sole metric, it wasn't that compelling or fulfilling, right? Like the best case scenario was to go from making 50K in sales to 100K in sales, 250K in sales. But at the end of the day, no matter how much my income changes, I'm still selling cars in a mall or I'm still knocking on doors in the hot heat. And so it was then in my mid-20s where I got super depressed. I started over drinking, I started over smoking, overeating. Like I got into these really bad health cycles, got myself into $30,000 of debt. At the precipice of all this, like at this intersection of challenge and enthusiasm, my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. And when she broke up with me, dude, I was devastated. It was the last thing I had, right? She was the last bit of joy or bit of like enjoyment in life that I could get. I like went to rock bottom. I was depressed. I was burnt out for weeks. I couldn't think. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The breakup really affected me. It's funny though, because during that relationship, she had actually introduced me to personal development, and by her bedside, she actually had a Grant Cardone book in her library. She loved Quest bars. She loved hot Cheetos. It sounds kind of like crazy, but at the time she broke up with me, I played it cool. But in my mind, I just remember having this like fuel in me of like, life isn't working. My career isn't working. My income isn't working. Now she doesn't want me. Like, it was just this like so much fire inspiration from wanting to do something, but not knowing how. Finally got channeled one day when I abruptly quit my job at Tesla. I literally had no plan and I was down to my last couple $100, moved back into my parents' house. So literally the walls were closing in on me with all this pressure. My last couple $100 I invested in a life coach, shout out Dave Thorpe. And Dave asks me, if life was perfect, what would happen next? And that question changed my life because when he asked me, I told him about the breakup and he goes, dude, congratulations, that's awesome. I was like, what? How's that awesome? That sucks, right? He told me, you can either use this to break down or to break through. Whatever you want, the universe will respond to. He talked about this concept of like, you can't control the cards you're dealt, just how you play the hand. So we start taking inventory of all the hand, all the cards in my hand, right? So, well, yeah, I have a lot of debt. Yeah, I don't know what I want to do, but now I got all this firepower. I got all this personal development knowledge. I know how to sell. I know how to communicate. And at that time, when I had that coaching session, I don't know what I wanted to do. I was just heartbroken and lost. And so we essentially like metaphorically laid it all out on the table, right? Like ingredients in a kitchen. And little by little, we started piecing it together. you know? And he was like, if life was perfect, what would happen next? And when he asked me that, I told him I would surround myself with the best people in the world. I would have an A+ team, inspire millions of people, and I would make millions of dollars. Hey guys, quick question. Have you been enjoying this video, but you're thinking to yourself, man, I love this content, but I wanna learn how to grow my brand or my business? Well, if your answer is yes, you're not alone. In fact, millions of entrepreneurs deal with this exact same issue. And it's something that I've learned the answer to from interviewing 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs around the world. And this philosophy that solves all that is a concept called who, not how. Now, the who, not how philosophy states that anytime you're stuck on the hows to get to the next level in your life, your brand, or your business, that there's always a who to help you get there. And it's for this exact reason that I'm super excited to announce that I've officially launched our brand new Passionate Few community to help you do exactly that. And yes, it's 100% free. Join me and the thousands of other entrepreneurs that can help you make your life, your business, and your dreams a reality. With no further ado, let's get back to the video. I remember he was like, don't get overwhelmed, just start with one, just one, the power of one, right? So that was the first huge lesson that he taught me is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And so the first step was like, let's just film one video with one person. In my head, I'm like, you know, how am I gonna fund it? How can I afford it? Where are the cameras? Who am I gonna interview? Like, who's gonna wanna do it? Am I even good at it? And so little by little, we just untangled the webs on all of those. And he was like, don't worry about any of that. Let's get one video guy to film one video and put it on YouTube. And let's see what happens. So then Dave taught me the next lesson, which is that resourcefulness is the ultimate resource, right? Is the ability to use the resources you do have, right? Maybe you don't have money, but you have time, right? Or maybe you don't have money or time, but you have relationships with people who have skill sets who are down to be partners in what you're doing, right? So there's always a way to use the resources you have, essentially to get the resources you want, right? The value exchange of life. We put these videos out, they started getting momentum. And then once that first video went out, we started to get views. And then I was like, okay, well, I want to do more. And so I was like, who could I interview? Then I remembered all the people my ex-girlfriend was into, right? She loved Grant Cardone and she loved all the products, right? The Hot Cheetos, the Quest bars, Grant's books and all this on sales. And so I was like, how crazy into the universe would it be if I could somehow interview all these people and then she see it later, but me never hit her up. Now I look back and it was silly, but at the time it was like fuel motivation, right? In my mind, I was like, all right, she doesn't want my time. Like I'll show her that the world wants my time or the world values what I have to say or do. Long story short, I actually used it as motivation and I found a way to interview all three of them. Grant Cardone, creator of Hot Cheetos, and the billion-dollar creator of Quest Nutrition, Tom Bilyeu. So the story of how I got Grant is actually super funny. I live in LA, he lives in Florida. I saw on his Instagram, was on vacation with Elena and the kids, which is his wife and family. I heard on their Instagram story, Grant saying to Elena, hey, are we still doing dinner in Beverly Hills at like 8 o'clock? I look it up on a GPS map and I see that it's like 2.5 hours away. And I think to myself, I wonder if I could pitch him on being interviewed on my podcast. And keep in mind, this is scary because at the time I don't have an audience. I really don't have any momentum at all. I don't have a name for myself. Like Grant's humongo at the time. It's not like nowadays where everybody's on podcasts. So I had all these limiting beliefs, but the pain and pressure inside me was just like, prove you're wrong. So that drove me at the time was crazy, but I go to Beverly Hills, I get to this restaurant and in my head, I'm like, this is stupid, what am I doing? I feel like a stalker, like all these things in my head. But then there's this voice in me that's just like, what if it works? What if this works and it's a story one day I could like share with the world, which ended up happening. I go into the restaurant and I ask if I could use the restroom, right? My plan is to go to the restroom and use it as an opportunity to like scope out the place and see if Grant and Elena actually showed up. So I go, I don't see anybody, and I'm like, Then I walk out, and then out of the corner of like just my eye, I hear this voice and I see and hear Grant and his wife, and they're like right there in person in front of me. And now I'm thinking like, holy shit, my crazy plan is actually like 90% like working. Finally, Grant and Elena walk out of the restaurant. And at this point, I'm like sweaty. I'm like so nervous, dude. Like my heart's been racing. I've rehearsed all these scripts in my mind because I have this impossible plan to get them on the podcast. So I just say, F it. I walk up to them very respectfully and I say, you know, hey Grant, pleasure to meet you. My name is Omar. I happen to see that you were in town. I just want to shake your hand and meet you. And he was like, oh wow, nice to meet you, da da da. Did you know I was gonna be here or what? Like jokingly, right? Grant was super cool. And I was like, yeah, I saw that you were in town, so I like stopped by or whatever. And he goes, how far do you live from here? And I was like, a couple hours. He goes, you drove a couple hours just to shake my hand and meet me? So he took a liking to that and appreciated that. Then right after I said, you know, by the way, Grant, I know you normally never do this, and I know you'll probably say no, but I know you're in town for a couple weeks. I was wondering if you'd be interested if I could come to you and interview on my podcast. We'll be in and out in an hour, super easy setup. We'll come to you, we'll make it easy. And then he just kind of looked at Elena and kind of like laughed. He goes, well, why should I do a podcast with you, right? Like kind of give me, like testing me a little bit. And I said, consider me the young man you once were, was somebody that gave you a chance. He goes, I like you, dude. He goes, yeah, I'll do an interview with you. My assistant will be in touch. And I think that was like one of my first 1 or 2 interviews like ever, was Grant Cardone, Elena Cardone in Malibu at the owner of Seven Jeans house, this mega mansion, while Grant is like smoking a cigar. And I'm chilling there with all these cameras and I'm like, how did I like manifest this moment, right? Like, how did this happen? And so we filmed the interview. Grant says it's the best interview he's ever done. We put it out, shouts it on social media, it gets like hundreds of thousands of views. And so instantly I start getting traffic, I start getting subscribers, I start getting sponsorship inquiries. Literally that one video ended up opening all these doors. For example, the next interview with the creator of Hot Cheetos, I saw that he was doing a speaking tour about his story. So I would go to all the different stops of his speaking tour, and when he got off stage, I would pitch him. And my plan was just to like elegantly pitch him, not be over gradient, not be overly like weirdo, like just be super respectful. And what I lack in intensity or aggressiveness, I make up for in consistency, like elegant persistence. So I go to the first stop of his tour, and then I go front row and ask him like, hey, you know, the podcast thing. And he goes, no, I don't do interviews. I went to his next stop. He said no. I went to his next stop. He said no. And then on the 4th touch, which was like months into the thing, he goes, man, you never give up, huh? And so then it just came from a very honest place, and it was the truth, you know? So I pitched him on the interview, and finally after 3 or 4 rejections, he was like, all right, I'll give you your interview. So now I got Grant, I got him. I DM'd Tom Bilyeu like 10 times. And then randomly after 10 times of DMing him and 0 response, he messages me back and he's like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Here's my address in Beverly Hills. And then I would just wing it, dude. I took so much imperfect action. I swing from having 0 experience to a couple months in. I'm now interviewing all these like billion-dollar level players. And then we put that out, and all 3 of those ended up getting hundreds of thousands of views, collectively millions of downloads across platform. And literally year 1 or 2, my career starts popping off. So the breakup for me was actually super powerful, because when she broke up with me one day, it was point blank out of nowhere. And I was devastated. And I realized like, if I didn't change or do something about it, I was gonna be stuck in this place. And so I turned my pain into power, right? I would get so like frustrated that I channeled all of my heartbreak and anxiety and missing her and all this into action. That was the fuel, right? When I would get rejected from the Hot Cheeto thing, I just kept thinking, imagine how much it would blow her mind. Like, it sounds crazy, I know. It wasn't that I wanted to even get her back or like have her like me or anything. It was just like an ego thing of like, man, I really needed somebody to believe in me, and I didn't get it. I would say only for the first like 6 to 12 months that really drove me. But once I got momentum, my ego on that dissolved. I made peace with all that. I never had ill will towards her. It was just the perfect fuel or combustion, and it worked to get the ball rolling, right? And then once I started getting feedback from fans all over the world, messages and comments, and how it was impacting their life and how they were inspired by the Passionate Few podcast, that started firing me up. And then that became the inspiration that still fuels me till this day. So to be honest with you, my best advice for anybody who's ever had dreams, desires, goals, and you find yourself in a situation where you're heartbroken or devastated, is to realize that it's all fuel, and that the label we give the experience becomes the experience, right? You and I choose if a breakup means it's time for a breakdown or a breakthrough. So I would encourage anybody to do the same thing, right? Ask yourself, what's good about this breakup? If you had to, I know you don't want to, I know you don't feel like it, I know you feel like moping and complaining, I get it. But take a step back and ask yourself, like, what is good about this? What's the opportunity here? How are you better because of this? How are you less stressed because of it? And little by little, right, you start asking your brain a question, it'll give you answers. If you don't believe me, imagine if I asked you, what color is your underwear right now? Whether or not you answer me, I 100% guarantee you just went into your brain and answered that question. And so what I started to learn is that the best entrepreneurs, the best human beings, and the most empowered mindsets in the world are people who control the questions they ask themselves. Because if you can control the questions, automatically the answers get better. And so for me, my best advice is to start asking new questions, because so many of us when we're in pain get stuck in reaction. But the power of life is to look at the fact that every single person, I guarantee you, that you look up to, that you're inspired by, that you're driven by, has been through the exact same challenges as you, and they got through it. And so learning how to turn that pain into power is not a perfect formula, but it could be a little thing, right? And the compounded effect of little things, taking imperfect action on them, fueling your pain into power, that's where things start to happen.